James Franklin Wasson was released from prison. After months of legal battles, mental health evaluations, and more than one close call, he walked out a free man. He was given a chance, a fresh start, one last opportunity to do things differently, and for 2 full days, it looked like maybe he would. But just 48 hours after tasting freedom, James would find himself in another courtroom, surrounded by armed officers, strapped in cuffs, his face twisted with rage, shouting profanities at a judge who had just delivered the news that would end his life as he knew it. What happened in those 2 days? That's what we're here to uncover. To understand how things unraveled so fast, we need to go back to where this all started. He was a father, a worker, someone who showed up, at least for a while. He had people in his life who still believed in him, job offers, kids he said he wanted to support. We even hear his lawyer vouching for him, and maybe, on some level, he felt that he had a worthwhile future. In April of 2017 in Butte, Montana police and probation officers were conducting a search at a house when a familiar car pulled up. The man behind the wheel was 28-year-old James Franklin Wasson, and almost immediately, everything went sideways. Officers approached the vehicle, but instead of cooperating, James took off. One probation officer fired at the tires of his car, flattening at least one. That didn't stop James. A full-blown police chase exploded through Uptown Butte. It ended in a crash. James was pulled from the vehicle and taken into custody. In jail, James attempted to harm himself. Authorities quickly transferred him to the Montana State Hospital in Warm Springs for a mental health evaluation. When he returned weeks later, he made a split decision. He wasn't wearing cuffs and he wasn't in jail-issued clothing, which is the standard discharge procedure, even for criminals. He arrived at the courthouse in an ambulance van, looking like any civilian prisoner coming back from the hospital. And as an officer turned to remove a bag from the vehicle, James seized his moment. He jumped out of the van, bolted down the street, and vanished for 20 minutes. Eventually, police found him at the entrance of St. James Healthcare. He was arrested again, but that escape set the tone for everything that would come next. In October 2017, James appeared in court. He pleaded guilty to felony escape, and in exchange, 6 other felony charges and 1 misdemeanor were dropped, including the charges from the high-speed chase. His talented attorney, one that James was fortunate to have, claimed that James had a job lined up. He had children. He had ties to the community. The court believed him. They concluded that poor mental health was the reason for his actions. He got what many would consider a blessing, a 10-year suspended sentence, meaning no prison time, as long as he followed the rules of probation. Drug testing, no alcohol, and no illegal activity. He had escaped custody just months before. He'd shown a willingness to run, to manipulate the system. But courts often have to weigh risk against hope, and that's the bet they made with James. His lawyer told the judge, James wants to be better. And Judge Brad Newman, a judge that James was also lucky to have, replied, I think it will give you a chance to succeed in the community, but I've got a key in my pocket and I can sure use it. It was clear. One mistake, and he was going away for a long time. Can you imagine the feeling when James walked out of that courtroom, a free man? And for 2 days there was no police reports, no news stories, just silence. It is unknown what James did with his 2 days of freedom until...
We begin with an update on the standoff that happened yesterday night on Montana Street. A man who threatened to shoot police ended in an arrest.
On October 17th, just days after the suspended sentence, James was back in the headlines. It began with another traffic stop. Police attempted to pull James over, but he refused to stop. Again. After a short pursuit, he ditched the car and barricaded himself inside an apartment on South Montana Street. It was a standoff. James told officers he had weapons, explosives, and if they entered the building, he'd shoot. His neighbors were evacuated. Police called in the SWAT team. High-powered rifles were aimed at the building. Behind the scenes of the hours-long standoff was a single voice, a police negotiator with 17 years of experience and a flawless track record, choosing to remain anonymous to avoid media attention. While tactical units surrounded the building, it was this one man, talking calmly over the phone, who convinced James to lay down the knife and surrender. In fact, this negotiator always resolves the situation without bloodshed. That night was no different. His skill likely saved James's life. When officers entered the apartment, they found no weapons, no explosives. But they found James with a self-inflicted knife wound. He was treated at a nearby hospital and taken into custody once again. The bond was set at $750,000, a number usually reserved for killers and gang leaders. But he hadn't even gone to trial yet, and no one, not even James, knew what was still to come. In the months that followed, James bounced between jails, courtrooms, and plea deals. His behavior was extremely volatile. Judge Ed McLean could see the pattern. In his chambers, he came to the conclusion that James isn't only a danger to others, he was a danger to himself. Judge McLean said, this defendant is continuously victimizing this community by committing these crimes. They've witnessed the chases, the threats, the escape, and the outbursts. But James didn't take the news well. Upon learning he was being sentenced to 10 years, James shouted, "You can kiss my," whilst kicking over a podium. Officers had to drag him out. But what happened in the next courtroom would become the defining moment of this entire case. 2 days after receiving a 10-year sentence, James was brought before a different judge. Judge Kurt Kruger was known for introducing programs to help rehabilitate criminals and drug addicts, especially those with families, so it was expected that he might have an offer of redemption for James.
I was an addict my whole life from age 11. The program changed my life, showed me how to live a different way.
This time, he entered the courtroom calm, ankle chains and cuffs on, but composed.
The court hereby sentences the defendant to 10 years MSP.
As the charges were read aloud, James stood silently, peering over court papers held by his public defender. But when Kruger reached the sentencing portion, something changed.
With 3 years suspended, and in relation to counts 2, 6, 7, and 11, the court also sentences the defendant to 10 years MSP with 3 years suspended on each count.
The judge rejected the plea agreement. He announced that the sentences would run consecutively, not concurrently.
Each of these counts shall run consecutive to each other. So the sentencing...
Meaning James wouldn't serve them at the same time. He'd serve them one after another. That's 35 years, plus the previous 10 years he was charged with.
DC 17267
I'm good, let's go.
Is 50 years MSP.
James tried to walk out. Even he knew he couldn't control his temper.
No, I'm good, let's go.
Is 50 years with MSP, with 15 to be hereby suspended.
James, sit up. James, sit Take him out of here, man.
Judge Kruger continued the sentencing.
In the matter of DC 277, the court hereby sentences the defendant on each 3 counts to 10 years MSP with no time suspended.
It was close enough to a life sentence.
So the defendant is hereby sentenced to on 277 to 30 years MSP. DC 17267 shall run concurrent.
45 years with a minimum term of 30 years.
You will have 120 days from today's date to review my written judgment to make sure my written judgment complies with my oral judgment in this matter.
He was arrested on November 3rd, 2017. He would have credit from that date.
You can suck my James.
He had been given the golden ticket to start afresh, but in the court's eyes, he seemingly tore that ticket up the moment he walked out, and so a blessing became a curse. To find out why this lady trapped her boyfriend in a suitcase, click the video appearing now, or support us for free and get rewarded by downloading Pi Network on the App Store. Then use code Dougie12.